I'd like to call to order our special workshop, 11 a.m. on February 7, 2024. Item A, call to order. Item B, declaration of a quorum. 5 members present, 2 absent. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for being here today. Brings us to item C, public comments, and I have one card. Do I have any others? All right. During this time, public comments are welcome. The Open Meetings Act prevents us from responding to speakers regarding items not on the agenda. Comments related to items on the agenda may be discussed during deliberations on that specific agenda item. Please complete the note card and give it to the executive assistant. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Those needing an interpreter may have up to 6 minutes. Each person has 1 opportunity at the microphone, regardless of minutes used. Unused minutes may not be accrued by another speaker. The executive assistant will time the comments and alert the president when time has expired. The board asks that those addressing the board refrain from derogatory comments. We're going to use this microphone right here and the card, and I apologize, I cannot pronounce the last name, but it's Nick. If you could pronounce your last name when you do come up here, though. So appreciate it. Come on up.
Hello, my name is Nick Logalbo. I'm a resident of College Station within the city limits. Thank you all for your time. Thank you, board. I want to address today this new bond issuance that's being proposed for $50 million and get some perspective and some feedback, well, not feedback, but some insight into what's being asked. Back in 2021, Prop D was proposed, and it was for $5 million for renovations for both high school stadiums. This was subsequently turned down by the taxpayers of College Station. At Prop C, this past November, 2023, proposed for $38 million for additional reservations, additions and renovations to both football stadiums. Also lost by a vote of 47 to 52. What I'm curious about is why is this being proposed again? The people of College Station already said no twice. This is the 3rd time it's being asked. And we just come off an election cycle this past November. Other items I want to talk about too is the Prop A and Prop B, which passed this past November, was for $299 million. The legacy debt that we had on the books was $465 million. That roughly comes out to about $3,700 per person per capita of debt load, general obligation debt load. With Prop A and Prop B being passed, that increased at 71% to $6,372 per person per capita. It's a significant increase, and that was not included in the initial bond flyer and not talked about in any of the lunch and learn sessions. This also does not include the interest. So when we talk about our total debt load right now of $764 million, that doesn't include the interest. And we're looking probably over well of $1 billion because those other 2 bonds have not, those 3 issuances that we passed for Prop A and Prop B have not gone out yet. So we have quite a lot of debt for College Station ISD. Just curious if there was any interest in making that known to the public, the actual exposure that we have as taxpayers to the overall debt. That in conjunction with the potential vouchers that might be passed. What does that impact the people that take their kids out of public schools? We still have to carry that debt load regardless. And I understand there are different lines of incomes that come from different sources, but it's still a total burden that we have to pay. And as taxpayers, we have the right to know the total amount of money we have to spend over X amount of years, 25, 30 years, whatever it might be. We're all planning on staying here long term. So when it was initially floated back this prior year, the bond flyer, it said 2 cents increase, right? It's 2 cents. That's not exactly true. It's 2 cents per $100 of valuation. So that transparency needs to be brought public to the people of College Station so they know what they're getting into. If I go buy a car or I get a mortgage, I'm going to know my total exposure. And that's just something I wanted to bring to everybody's attention. Thank you.
Thank you. That'll bring us to item D1, consideration and discussion related to a board resolution in support of a fair and transparent accountability system. Dr. Harkrider?
Yes, sir. I will not, this is just a consideration discussion item on a board resolution. I don't bring a lot of resolutions to you guys, but something that caught my attention back when I first started in July. In late summer of 23, we had 121 public school districts representing 1.9 million children in the state of Texas filed a lawsuit against Commissioner Morath on our current accountability system. The accountability system was drastically changed by the commissioner, and up until August, which was about 2 weeks before our accountability results were supposed to be released, we still did not have the accountability manual of what our kids and teachers were going to be judged on. Hence the lawsuit at that point in time, with me starting in the district for about 4 or 5 weeks. I didn't think that was something that we needed to partake on, considering I was still trying to figure out everybody's name and where I'm supposed to be. But now, after being here for 7 months, TASA has issued out this resolution. Only 121 school districts, which is a large majority, joined. I think there would be north of possibly 90+% that do think our current system and how it's being run and taken is not fair. It is not a tool for us to improve on. It's really a tool to publicly judge us of what our kids and our teachers do out of one day of the year when our kids test. So this resolution, there's nothing binding on the resolution. Basically, it's a public statement on the school board's behalf that I would like to bring back February 20th for action of your support for a fair and transparent accountability system. Some highlights are commit and support in pursuing action to ensure the rating system provides a fair, transparent, and effective system for assigning performance ratings to school districts. Oppose the commissioner's retroactive and drastic mid-year change to measures, methods, and procedures that were used for 22-23 school year. Stand in support of a rating system that adheres to Texas state law that was passed by our legislature, and stand in support of efforts to reform the accountability rating system to one that uses multiple effective measures for all grade levels and a more holistic approach to assign the ratings of a campus and the performance of each student in lieu of relying heavily on one standardized test. And I want to make it very clear also, we are not opposed to an accountability system. I think an accountability system makes us better, but our current accountability system lacks a whole lot in approving and actually showing what our kids and our teachers do for 172 days out of the school year. So just wanted to put this resolution out in front of you. If you've got any questions, be more than happy to ask. No action is being requested today.
May clarify that last statement. You're saying we do not need to, when you say no action, or were you asking us?
No action at this meeting.
You think we would
just
do it?
putting on your radar so you have an opportunity to read through it, have some time to process, then come back in a couple of weeks. And I would ask for you guys to take a public stance in support of a fair and equitable accountability system for our district as well as districts across the state.
Anything at the moment? Okay.
I'll save it for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. All right, moving on to number 2, consideration and discussion regarding the reconvened CSISD Long Range Facility and Bond Planning Committee recommendations. Mr. Dunson.
Hear the slide up there, David? All right. Mr. Horak, members of the board, as you'll recall, in March of 2023, you chartered a long-range facilities and bond planning committee to review the district's need for a bond referendum to support areas including facilities, renovations, deferred maintenance, buses, athletics, fine arts, land acquisition, technology, and other capital needs. The committee made recommendations to you back in June of 2023, and a bond election was called for CSISD the next month. That included 4 propositions, 2 of which were passed by College Station voters, marking the largest bond package passed in the history of the district. At the December 2023 board meeting, you amended the charter for the CSISD Long Range Facilities and Bond Planning Committee to reconvene, for the superintendent to add alternate committee members as needed, and for the committee to present recommendations to you as to how the district could potentially move forward with the 2 propositions that did not pass during the November election. The committee was represented by 37 members from around College Station with a variety of perspectives, including parents, civic leaders, educators and administrators, volunteers, retirees, and CSISD alumni. The committee met twice in the month of January to review election results from the November 7, 2023 general election, to discuss implications for the two propositions that did not pass, and hear from district and school staff and conduct a visual vote regarding the next steps to make recommendations that you're here to consider today. So we'd like to express our sincere gratitude to the members of the committee listed here on the slide for their time and efforts and valuable input on these projects. And so with that, I will turn it over to our two committee representatives, Rick Bennett and Paul Haverlook, for their recommendations.
First of all, I'll introduce myself. My name is Rick Bennett, and I was on the original Facilities Planning Committee and also on the one that just reconvened. With me is Paul Haverluck. First of all, I want to say thank you for allowing us a few minutes in your meeting today to discuss what we've been doing the last several weeks for the bond committee. And we appreciate your attention, and I want to congratulate the district and the community on the bond that passed it in November. We truly feel that this is going to impact thousands of lives with our students for many years to come. So congratulations on that. As Austin mentioned, we reconvened on January the 17th, and then again on January the 24th. And our discussion revolved around the two propositions that did not pass in November. Our committee discussed a lot of options for these two propositions, and we also had the coaches from the various schools and the softball and baseball coaches come in and discuss what their concerns and what their needs were. So we were really enlightened by their information and took all of that into consideration when we were talking about whether or not to move forward with these propositions. So Paul is going to highlight some of the committee recommendations.
All right. Like Rick said, I'm Paul Haverluck. I served on both committees as well. We, as a committee, originally walked all these facilities in College Station ISD and try to whittle it down to what was originally proposed in bond packages A through D. However, when we reconvened, even though we looked at other options, the meetings were really short and sweet because the committee as a whole felt that the needs were still the needs. This was not something that that all of a sudden changed because we didn't pass that. So when we looked at these things, we said to ourselves, we need to make functional, safety, and operational improvements. These are not aesthetic improvements. So aesthetic improvements typically are cheaper, and you can say you did something. And we felt that because of where both of these schools stand, specifically A&M Consolidated, they need some functional improvements, and those tend to take more planning and effort and dollars. So reviewing these, we looked at those two propositions, and we came out with, obviously, field house improvements. So we're going to keep the existing facility and renovate and add to it to make it functional, just to be able to serve the students that go through there. There's students who can't participate because there's just not enough functional space in that building. Both stadiums need some improvements, safety improvements, and stands, from handrails to just bleacher expansion. We have more student growth. We need to accommodate those, as well as press boxes that are, one is just functionally inadequate, and the other one needs some operational improvements due to some water intrusion and other aspects of that, and be able to serve all of the student sports that utilize that stadiums. That's not just strictly looking at football. And then we're also looking at both softball and baseball stadiums at both high schools. The playing surfaces is an issue. The maintenance to try just to keep the water off of that is impacting both playing time and practice time. So we're recommending that we convert to artificial turf on that, and we're going to expand some seating at the softball and modify some grading and some site improvements to keep the water intrusion down. So those are our recommendations.
So at our last meeting, we were charged with two tasks. The first one being, do we look at options to change these propositions? And the committee overwhelmingly decided to leave them as is. So we're not really looking to change anything from what we proposed in November. The second task we were charged with was deciding with whether or not we wanted to put this bond out or recommend to put this bond out at all, to put it out as soon as possible, or wait and put it out down the road. Again, the committee decided overwhelmingly to get the bond out as soon as possible. There is a sense of urgency with these renovations to our existing facilities, and we feel we need to get this back out to the public again. So with that, it is the College Station ISD Long Range Facilities Planning Committee recommends the Board of Trustees call a bond election for May 4th, 2024. And with that, we will answer any questions that you might have for us.
Do you want to just review, I mean, you mentioned the questions were asked at that last meeting, right? Kind of the vote of the group. Do you have the actual numbers on those or?
Numbers in terms of who voted for and against?
Yes.
I don't believe we had anybody vote against it. I believe we had one person that voted to push the bond down the road to the following election.
And this was about out of how many people?
I think we had approximately 30 people.
Okay.
Yeah.
The committee was given two choices: go out in May, or to table and wait. The one that put in the category of table and wait wrote November on their dot.
And committee was made up of community members, parents, those who didn't have kids in the district, right, with multiple different representation across the community, correct?
Absolutely.
Right. Students and teachers as well.
There were also students present.
I believe there was also 4 or 5 brand-new members that were not part, as some folks rolled off. Some new folks rolled in on the board that were not part of what was called for November.
So you're talking about a comprehensive review, multiple steps of planning, review, needs assessment, all of those things
Correct.
put into this.
Anything else? We appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
y'all so much. Number 3, consider an act on an order calling a bond election to be held by the College Station Independent School District on May 4th, 2024. Ms. Draws.
Thank you, Mr. Horak, members of the board. So in front of you today, in the event that you are ready to move forward, is an order for an election for May 4th, 2024. That order it's several pages long, but it basically consists of those 2 propositions that you just heard of. Proposition A for $40,200,000. That is for renovations and additions to existing athletic stadiums for both high schools, as well as the field house at A&M Consolidated. And this is for use for football, band, dance, soccer, track, and other student groups. So this is really what the ballot language that's listed in your order would look like. It also has this is a property tax increase as required by law. Then Proposition B for $13,270,000 is for the renovations renovations to the existing Consol and College Station High School baseball, softball stadiums. A little bit more work at A&M Consolidated softball as opposed to the others because of their stands and some conditions that they're in. And again, as required, this is a property tax increase. So we really studied these proposition or ballot languages that will be there. That's probably the biggest change in the order from last time to this time. Trying to be transparent in who benefits from that. So, the timeline for this election, the deadline to call is next Friday, February 16th. Then Thursday, April 4th is the last day to register to vote. There's several elections this spring, so all of those are a little bit different. Early voting is from Tuesday, April 22nd through Thursday, April 30th, with Election Day on a Saturday, May 4th. So that order is in front of you. If you have any questions on that, I'd be glad to answer those.
What else could possibly be on the ballot at a May 4th election?
So the only thing that we are aware of on this particular one is the 3 board members for the Brazos Central Appraisal District. Now, there is until February 16th to file that, so we're not positive, but that's the only thing that we have been made aware of. And that is new. Those board members have always been appointed by the taxing jurisdictions, and because of our county size, we now have to have, that board has to have 3 elected positions.
Countywide.
Countywide.
Countywide. So like primary runoffs would not potentially happen on that date?
No,
They
ma'am.
happen before that, or?
There's an election before and an election after. I don't have quite the
A
order.
runoff would be after?
Runoffs would be after hours.
After,
Yeah,
I believe
okay.
it's 2 weeks after.
Okay.
So for historical background, the separation of athletics and technology bonds started in 2021, is that correct?
2019 was when it passed.
Okay.
2021 was the first time College Station ISD experienced it. And so what the requirement is there several things that must be broken out.
Right.
One is for any stadium and its adjacent facilities that seats 1,000 or more. Now, you can group those together, so that's why we have both athletic fields on one proposition. And then other, I'm trying to think of the right word, recreational facilities that are not used by the entire population of the district. So, but that excludes a gymnasium.
So when you're talking about, historical perspective, educating voters, transparency of where taxpayers' dollars are being used, what that did was provide accountability for exactly where they're going, right? So we've got our schools, which were A and B. We've got technology, which is separate. We have athletics, which is separate.
Correct.
So now the voters know where it's going, but that's also new in an educational piece. So theoretically, what districts could do, if they wanted football stadium renovations, is pass a bond and build a new school. And oh, by the way, $50 or $100 million is built in. So for transparency purposes, this is exactly what that proposes and what these bonds do. So taxpayers know where their dollars are being used, but that's also new to the taxpayer, correct? So this is an educational piece. And the first go-round, I believe the percentage of athletics bonds that passed was around 33, 37%.
It was very low the first time, yes.
Right. So constantly needing to educate voters on what this is used for and where it's going, all of which is public information.
Right.
Okay.
Is it my understanding that we can accomplish this with the current tax rate?
So when the last time we went out in 2023, we estimated an additional 2 cents on the debt rate. That does not count the other side, which probably will go down. We are estimating that it would not take any additional cents on top of that. So that 2 cents we quoted for 2023, we would not need to do anything else.
And for X amount of years, our tax rate has gone down?
Yes,
Considerably.
since 2019.
Since 2019, and enrollment has continued to grow.
Correct.
Yeah, I actually think both of those 2 points are so important, and they're part of the education, and that this is how our system in Texas allows us to fund facilities and capital improvements for our schools, right? It is the system, correct? Which is, as you said, Dr. Payne, is going out to our voters. It's a transparent ask for what we need. And the important piece that, yes, we have continued to run some debt load, as our speaker said, but it is because we have been a growing district. And even when we haven't, even if you're not growing, we have facilities that are, greater than 50 years old out there, that it is our again, in my opinion, our responsibility to keep in good shape for our taxpayers as well as obviously for our students. So I think really people need to understand that that is our mechanism for funding these things. And we have continued to, I feel, do it for our community and our students, and do it with bringing the tax rate down at the same time. There's always been over history, some bond that has continued to help us either grow or continue to support our facilities, because this is how we do it, and we have done that and we could continue to do that without increasing that tax rate right now.
Yeah, so just to clarify, I do believe our tax rate has declined even prior to 2019. I just don't have that in front of me, but I know for a fact 2019. So one of the things about the 2023 bond, the $299 million, we will not be selling that all at once. So this $299 million is not going to add to our total debt rate, our total obligations. It'll probably take 3 years. 3 to 4 years for us to issue all of that. So it's going to take time. And if you look at our other debt, we've got in about 5 years some debt falling off, which is why we structure it that way and we can schedule our principal payments. That's why we can do $299 million with 2 cents on the tax rate, because we do have some debt that falls off.
And important, I think, was noted that, if you look at football stadiums, they are used how many days out of the year? I mean, it's not just football games and practices. Tons of teams, organizations, and clubs are using these facilities all the time. And so there's a lot more to it than that. And if you look at what we offer, I think we offer 50-ish certificates and licenses that you can graduate high school with, which means we're investing in our kids to go out and immediately contribute and work to our community. So if you're a taxpayer, what you're looking at is an investment in our kids. And a lot of our kids benefit from other things beyond the classroom that athletics brings, such as learning teamwork, personal development and growth, doing hard things, learning about competition, physical and mental health. So the benefits are really innumerable.
On the order, assuming this passes and we sign off on it, it mentions outstanding principal of the district's debt obligations as of the date of the order, $324 million and some change.
Right.
And that's on the aggregate. And then the aggregate on the district's debt obligations as it pertains to outstanding interest is just over $107 million. And we haven't even brought the 299 yet, so that's not included in that.
That is not included. That
Right.
is as of
today,
our last
today.
audit. And we have not paid, we will be paying some principal down this year.
Right.
We only pay 2 installments, one February, but that's interest only because we got to make sure we get all of our tax revenue in.
Right.
And then August is when there's principal and interest. So that 324, that will decline as well for the principal payments this
Right.
year.
And then if these props both go to election, they both pass, we're not changing anything on the cents from back in the spring of last year. It's still the 2 cents or less.
What we communicated was 2 cents on the debt rate, or possibly less,
Right.
for what passed in 2023. That still holds, but we would not have to need any additional cents for these 2 propositions.
I think the biggest part about it is that, having sat through these over the last few years, is that it's still a need. Nothing's changed. It's still a need. The taxpayers voted for Prop A. Prop A says that we're expanding the schools to 2,700 students each. The 2 comprehensive high schools to 2,700 enrollment. If that's agreed upon, then the need is obviously here for these facilities that are in question now, because what we currently have at both locations is not going to suffice for 2,700 students, let alone 2,500 students. And so when we look at that, as it correlates with safety, as it correlates with just overall, I guess, kind of like Dr. Payne said, It's not just one group of kids using these facilities, and that's the bigger part. I understand, on the baseball fields and softball fields, but we hadn't done a dang thing on those fields, and I couldn't tell you how long. If everybody experienced the rain we had a few weeks ago, those kids hadn't seen a baseball, softball field in quite a while. So the needs are going to still be there no matter what, whether we put it out for this election, whether we put it out in November of next year or May of 25, the needs are still going to be there. And that's what we have to take into consideration of trying to figure out whether we're for it or against it. And I understand we've put it out twice, but I don't know that we've educated the community and those that realize it. Because the other part of this is that elementary parents and those parents of those kiddos are going to be the ones that benefit from this the most. It might help some of the freshmen that are in school right now, and it might help the incoming class freshmen into those schools next year. But in the end, the kids that are in intermediate and elementary, this is where this all comes full circle. And I know it's hard to look past that and down the road and understand that part of it, but that's part of where we have to understand that as the district continues to grow, as we continue to be better, and as we continue to be great, our facilities and the safety of these kids when they're in these facilities needs to be taken into consideration. And I get it. CSHS 2012 built, not very old. Why are we doing stuff there? Things like that. I'm sorry, we live in Texas. Things happen. Weather affects everything. I know it happens, and we have to take care of those things. And Saul, I've said it I don't know how many times, it looks exactly like it did when I graduated in 97. And even when Heather graduated, way before me. So I'm just saying that I understand the perception and the optics of it, but I also understand, having been in these facilities and seeing what it is, that I'm okay with putting it back out there. So that's my 2 cents on it, as far as just having thought about this over the last 3 or 4 weeks as this has come up. So, but my question obviously started with the whole debt part, because no, we don't want to go into debt, but hence the fact there's a method to the madness, and you're doing everything you can and a great job to make sure that the district does not put ourselves in a place where we are in a bad situation. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So by law, we cannot, your INS tax rate cannot be above what that debt payment that you have to make is. So that money has to be made towards your debt payment of existing debt, or you can pay debt off early. So we can't tax above what we need.
I motion to approve order calling for a bond election for May 4th, 2024.
Sorry, I just had one thing that I wanted to ask for. We're talking about transparency. We're talking about wanting to make sure our community understands. And so, I know a question that comes up sometimes is, okay, well, isn't there another way we could pay for this? So I'm just asking you, Ms. Strauss, to tell us, is there another way besides this that we could take care of these needs?
So we have had a flat amount of revenue per student since 2019, has not gone up. That's property taxes and state revenue. So, and inflation and number of teachers, number of staff, raises, health insurance, all of that has gone up, and we have not gotten any. So there is not room in our general fund, nor in our fund balance. We have a good fund balance, thankfully, to get us through these times until we can get to a legislative session that fixes this problem. But we can't deplete it, or we would be in a heap of trouble. So there is not capacity in our general fund to do this type of work.
Another thing that Amy spoke on of funding being flat, as our property values across the state have been historically high over the last 2 or 3 years. As we generate more funds locally, the state gives us less funds. So there's the mix. We're more on the hook with local money, but we get less state money. And I think that confuses a lot. Our entire funding system confuses everybody, even those that work in it every single day. So those property values, historically high, yes, we're generating more money locally, but state gives us less money. So it's not a windfall for us by any means at all.
I second the motion.
We have a motion by Dr. Payne, second by Ms. Simmons. Any further discussion? Question?
Yeah, I do want to kind of summarize my thoughts on it. I shared some of them because to me, there are a lot of there were a lot of things to think about over the last few weeks for this, right? Because we have taken it out there twice. We have some voters who are probably not going to support it, right? That's just going to be a reality. But when I want to listen to those voters, obviously. Though when I step back and really look at it for me, I think it kind of comes down to three things. Well, first of all, I do believe in investing in our students and so that is really kind of the bottom line. And I look at the capacity. That to me is the no-brainer that we need space specifically in the field house and in other places in our our facilities, our multi-purpose facilities, that to support all of our students. My belief is we should have as many students who want to participate in those co-curricular activities be able to, because there is so much benefit from those. So to me, it's a part of a good, well-rounded education, so we need to do the capacity. And the second one is the safety issue, right? Some of these projects are a safety issue, and so that's obviously always important. And then the third is what I talked about before, was more the kind of the fiscal responsibility. I do believe we have to support our assets, and this is how we do it. And we have done it in a way with keeping our tax rate very manageable. So that's where I come down on it. So yes, I also will support putting it back on.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Draws. That'll bring us to item 4, consider approval of an interlocal government agreement between College Station Independent School District and Brazos County related to the May 4, 2024 general election.
Yes, sir. This is just the interlocal agreement to put the bond election on the ballot for May 4th, 2024, with a joint election with Brazos County.
Motion to approve is presented.
I second.
Motion by Dr. Payne, second by Ms. Ege. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. That'll bring us to item 5, recommendation for Assistant Superintendent of Operations. Dr. Harkrider.
Yes, sir. I have a recommendation today for part of the reorganization that we discussed last month with an Assistant Superintendent of Operations that will oversee HR, facilities, transportation, safety, and risk management. I'm excited to present to you guys Josh Simak. Josh has been in our district for 17 years, has worked his way up the ranks, has built in a lot of trust with our current staff members. He's been a huge resource to me. I'm also a very firm believer as we have openings in our central leadership team. If we can promote within, it's something that I always like to do. I think it's great to show that we work with our folks and we build capacity within. There are times that we need to go outside the district for positions, and this is not one of them. So I'm happy to present Josh Simak as my recommendation for Assistant Superintendent of Operations.
Motion to approve is presented.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Payne, second by Ms. Simmons. Any further questions?
I just want him to continue to be funny on the microphone. At athletic events, it's all, it's my only request.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Congratulations, Mr. Simak. And that brings us to item 6, consideration and discussion related to a management oversight workshop for CSISD Transportation Department. Welcome, Hector. How are you, sir?
Doing all right. The members of the board, President Dr. Harkrider, thank you for allowing me to speak to you this afternoon, right before lunch. We're going to try to be as concise as possible, but give you all the information that you need. I want to give you a glimpse of my world, our world, and hopefully answer any questions or comments you guys may have about our world. So, why do we do this? So, as you may be aware, the Center Reform School Systems, the CRSS definition, says that the policies and processes used by a school district or school board to ensure integrity and performance of the district's major businesses and operational systems. Obviously, we are a support service, and we are one of the ones that may have to report to you guys and let you know what we're doing and how we're doing it. As you can see, we're not the only ones. Technology is also on there: facilities, construction, finance, and human resources. The CRSS definition says that the board needs to know, are the students safe? Are the employees safe? Are the district's assets secure? Are the laws and policies followed? Does fairness prevail? Are major businesses systems effective and efficient? And if we had to shorten this presentation, I would say yes to all of that. And if you trust me, obviously we're going to go through the presentation and show you how we do that. The agenda, we're going to talk about the mission and purpose of the department, the organization and the staffing, the budget, bus fleet, the daily transportation data, the recruiting and training, safety, routing, the challenges that we face, and lastly, the metrics of how we measure that. Here's our mission and the purpose. So those three things that you see up there in highlight and bold and underline, everything we do, we try to mesh with that. Safety, courtesy, and efficiency. And I tell my staff, if you have an idea of how to improve our department or an idea of how to do something differently, then does it meet that criteria? And if it does, we move forward with it. If it doesn't, it may not be a good idea. We do obviously go with the same motto as our district. We want success for each life, each day, and each hour, and we try to do that with our bus services as well. So the organization, the staffing, we have approximately 130 bus drivers and monitors. As you know, I am the director. I've been at this post here at College Station for about 16 years, and overall about 3 decades in the business of school buses. I know, I don't look it, but trust me. The interim assistant director, a good man behind me, dressed like he is ready to take over and do what needs to be done, anything else for transportation, is Chuck. Chuck Longwell is my interim assistant director. The great-looking gentleman right next to him is Fred, and Fred is my third in line to take over things and also be responsible when things get in the trenches. Fred Johnson is our fleet operations gentleman, and he has 4 technicians that work under him, a shop foreman, and also a parts clerk. Other staff that we have in our department, we have our secretary, Courtney Dorn. You may recognize that name. She used to be up front here at central office, and I stole her from Josh and everybody else here to take her over there and help us with our department. My lead trainer, we have 1 lead trainer, Mary Coulter, and we have 1 full-time dispatcher, that would be Heather. If you call the transportation, more than likely you're going to get Heather. And we have 1 part-time dispatcher, and that is vacant at the moment. We have we actually have 2 full-time routing specialists. So Chuck is really our routing specialist at the moment that is stepping up and has done a great job with other duties as assigned. As you know, we had a tragedy this year, and we're still reeling because of that, but we're moving forward as well. We do have 91 school bus drivers. Most of those are 25 hours a week. And we also we break that down by 78 permanent drivers. And what we mean by that, ladies and gentlemen, is those folks are there 5 hours a day, 25 hours a week. They're eligible for benefits and other fringe benefits as well. We have 13 people that we consider temporary, and those folks come and go during the day. They can't help us the full day or the full week, so they're not eligible for benefits and other items, so we consider those temporary. We also have 37 school bus monitors, and those are all permanent. Another word for that is full-time, even though it's not a 40-hour week. We only have one office staff that does not possess a CDL, a commercial driver's license, and that is by design. When it comes down to it, when all hands are on deck, including yours truly, and we began the year this way, en route, all of us. I mean, from me to Chuck to Fred, everybody in the shop, one person does not possess a CDL, so they can stay behind and answer the radio and answer the phone calls. And that is Courtney, that is our secretary. And it does come to that sometimes, based on the needs and the resources that we have. The pay schedule, let me talk to you a little bit about that. So our bus driver incentive that we have, and we've had it for about 2 years now, is if you have a CDL, the district is offering $1,000. It takes close to $3,000, ladies and gentlemen, to train somebody off the street with no CDL. So that is a very good investment in people that come already with a CDL, ready to drive a bus, and have some experience. If they don't have a CDL, we train them, we help them get their license, and they get to have a $750 bonus when they get their commercial driver's license. The current driver pay for our drivers is $1,750. And there's a little bit a note later on, but we are a little bit below our competitor, our main competitor, which is the district that shall remain nameless next door. They pay $19 an hour. Very happy to say, though, that we very seldom lose people to that competitive, to that other competition. So we hold our own. The bus aid entry pay is $11 an hour. By the way, the $11 an hour is also our training pay. If somebody comes in off the street with no license or no P&S endorsement, while they're training, we pay them $11 an hour. The base pay is also annualized. So what we do, and we've done this for about 5 years now, if you weren't on the clock, you weren't getting paid. And so what we did is we looked at everything and we realized that if we could spread out their pay throughout the year for a school bus driver that's not working and a monitor that's not working the summer, this will give him a secure base pay throughout the year. That has helped us tremendously to keep and to recruit people. There was a handful of people that had a hard time with that. After 5 years, we have almost nobody say anything about, hey, can we go back to the old system? Budget. I'm not going to bore you with all of the numbers, but you can see we got 21, 22 column there, 22, 23, and then this year's. As you can see, the numbers keep going up. You know, we talked about, you guys talked about earlier about the cost of doing business. As you can see, for us in transportation, it is the same as well. We started out in 21, 22 with 4,291,000 and some change, and we are at the 5.1 million already, close to 5.2. Do want to highlight that in 2018-19, that was the year previous to COVID, fuel cost, if you could see that, has gone up 75%. That's not just because of cost, but that's also because of all the things that we're doing for the district, field trips and other responsibilities. But yeah, the cost of fuel has gone up tremendously. We
Can I-
don't, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, you probably, maybe we're going to get to it, but I wanted to catch you before you moved on. Just what's the less trip redistribution? Just,
Thank you for noticing that. So that is what we recapture from doing field trips to the different campuses. So we start that account on a negative, and then as we charge campuses for our services, that account becomes hopefully a positive. And as you can see, it has in the past, and it's very steadily has gone up. So more and more field trips every year. Does that make sense? Okay.
I guess, is it sports too, or just?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Every field trip that we do, sports included. Yes, ma'am. All right, a little quick overview of our inventory. So total buses, 122 at the moment. 84 of those are regular education buses. That's your 71/77 passengers. And we do have 38 special needs buses. As far as routes are concerned, we have 45 regular education buses, routes, and 25 special needs. We do have 8 career and technology routes. At the moment, we have about 41 students that are McKinney-Vento, and we have 2 routes that are dedicated to those folks, and we have 19 that are not dedicated. What that means is we integrate those students into existing routes. That makes the route a little longer, but it's more efficient. We have 6 routes that are dual language, and those are non-dedicated as well. We integrate them with other routes, and we have 1 paid rider student at the moment, 1 route. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about what that is in a moment. Employee student transfers, at the moment, we have 93 students. That's mostly teachers that have kids that work at one campus and kids that are going to another campus. So we do that as a courtesy as well for our students and our teachers whenever we can do it. The balance. The reserve field trips buses that we have at the moment are 29. They're not always all up in service at the moment. Ever since COVID, we have gone through a period of, like everybody else, blockchain and delivery of parts, and where it used to take us 24 hours to turn around with a difficult situation where a repair needed to be done. Now it's taken us a week, 2 weeks, not because we don't have the staff. Sometimes that's an issue when mechanics, technicians are en route, but it's the delivery of the parts. That has come to play quite a lot, just like every other business out there. Field trips. We have approximately 10 buses that are dedicated to field trips buses. And in the shop, on a good day, we may have 4 buses in the shop. On a bad day, we may have 10, which is the maximum we can have in our shop at the moment. This is what I call my little matrix-looking sheet, and it'll be a little bit more descriptive as I go along. But you can see pretty much in a nutshell in one sheet what we have. You may notice, let me bring you your attention to the 2024 line. We have several buses there, and I've got a note on there. So in red, those were received mid-2023. They were ordered at the end of 2021. So it used to be we'd get buses in 3 months after we ordered them. Now it's taken up to 18 months. That's why you see the disparity. What we're trying to do, and I'll explain this a little bit more further, is not have the bunch of buses in every year. As you can see, for example, 2015, we had 30 buses there. Previously, we had 24 buses that were 2011. And then also in 2017, we had 19 buses. That's great, right? Getting that many buses into our system, right? But when they get old and they need to be retired and they need to be let go, you got a bunch of buses that you need to replace now, and that's quite costly. So what we're trying to do is spread out our buy and maybe not get as many in one year, particular year, but spread it out over years. That's what we started to do in 2022. Of course, the model year doesn't align to the year, by the way. As you can see, we've got several, 18 buses that are model 2024. And actually, those buses were ordered in 2 different orders, yet they were all 2024. Now, ones in blue were actually received in 2023. Now, that translates into this, the bus replacement. Most of our bus replacement ideas and ways of doing it was through bonds. Before 2011, we were buying approximately 10% of our fleet every other year. As Ms. Amy can attest, the budget cannot sustain that. So now what we're doing is we're waiting to pass bonds to buy these buses. We did that in 2011, 2015, 2017, 2021, and lastly, 2023, and thank you very much for passing that for us. We have actually ordered the first batch of the buses for 2023 out of the 64, and we will continue to do that over the next 3 years. Bullet number 2, as you can see, 40%, a little bit over 40% of our fleet is more than 12 years old. Why is that important? The industry standard is that you should get rid of a bus if it's more than between 10 and 12 years old. What happens after that is you're spending a lot of money in maintenance, and you're spending a lot of money that could be spent on new buses that doesn't have as many issues over the years. So that's quite a big number, 40%. And that's why we are getting 64 buses in the next 3 years, hopefully to beat down that number. Also, 59% of the fleet, a little bit over 59%, is less than 12 years old, which is the ideal situation in our vocation. Now, buses currently can take up to 18 months, like I said earlier, so we have to make that assumption when we're ordering buses. So, daily transportation data. As you can see, the goal for our department, and this is pretty much an industry standard, is to have an average travel time of 1 hour, okay? On average, right now, our routes are 45 minutes. Just gives us enough time between bell times to serve the elementary with a certain set of buses, and the same set of buses will be utilized for the secondary. Some districts may have 3 tiers. We have a 2-tier system. The more tiers you have, the more you can extend that fleet, so to speak, with the same personnel. The distances that we travel on average is 30 miles one way. The maximum is 30 miles one way. The average is about 20 miles as it stands right now. The student miles, as you can see, based on our reports, the 22-23 school year, we transported 3,450 students. As it stands right now, year to date, we have 3,419. More than likely, we will meet the 3,450 by the end of the year and surpass that. Special needs, we transport 446. And at the moment, last year we transported 446. At the moment, we are at 413. Kate, that's career and technology, last year 106. This year so far, 96 students. And then you see the totals out there. We're a little below last year, but we more than likely will meet our numbers from last year and exceed those. The total mileage for routes, as you can see, it is growing. I like to say to the moon and back twice currently. So imagine that. We are, as we mentioned earlier, doing 1,970 field trips a year. The last time I gave this presentation, we were at 1,500, and that's about 3 years ago. All right, recruiting and training. Recruiting, so everything that we can get our hands on and then some, we try to do that. As you can imagine, this is part-time employment, 5 hours a day. It's hard to live off of 5 hours a day, even at $17.50 an hour. So as you can see later on in the presentation, our turnover rate is quite high, but that's expected for our area. So we use Indeed, the newspaper, the job boards, Craigslist, buses at the high schools, you may have seen them, bus advertising, and then lately, job fairs have been wonderful for us. Thank you, Josh, for doing that for us. We've acquired several people at those job fairs lately. Now, to keep in mind, it takes about a month and a half to 2 months to fully process a person that has no CDL coming into our doors. So if we need 5 drivers by tomorrow, we're not going to have 5 drivers by tomorrow. It's going to take some time. And that's just the process of training and all the requirements that must be met, and also DPS procedures and scheduling come into play. The minimum qualifications for a driver is you have to comply with ELDT, and that stands for Entry-Level Driver Training. New words, new acronyms that we learned recently about 2 years ago when the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration said, okay, you just can't send somebody to DPS with no training. They got tired of people sending and coming up to DPS and not passing the test. So they said, we will not accept anybody unless they have been trained by federal guidelines and requirements. So that came into play about 2 or 3 years ago. And we have to do that as well. Valid Texas commercial driver's license, you have to have a Class B and also a P, passenger, and S, a school bus endorsement. And that goes pretty much across the whole nation. Must pass the DOT physical, pre-employment, and annual. And that is becoming a little bit sometimes difficult. Sleep apnea is one of the biggest things that people come in and say, well, I have sleep apnea. Well, now you got to go through a study before you can apply and pass a DOT physical. And sometimes if they're not employed with us, they'll say, sorry, I'm not going to do it. I got to go somewhere else. We also have random and pre-employment DOT drug screening, and we do the gamut, obviously, and those are done at random, like it says, and we're very successful at that. Very few hits on that end. You must also pass a fingerprinting process, and that is done by HR, and also the point system criteria from DPS, and I'll go into a little bit more detail of what that is in a minute. A little bit more on the hiring. There you go. So the abilities, hopefully complete required bus driver safety training course, follow written, verbal directions, communicate effectively with the public, manage student behavior, and operate a school bus. Which one do you think of those is the most challenging for our folks? That one right there. And we have great kids, by the way. I came from West Texas and a little larger district. We had a lot more challenges. But that is the #1 factor at any district, no matter how good or how bad the district is. It takes a very special kind of person to deal with 70 to 77 kids with your back to them, right? And then driving and watching traffic at the same time. It really does. So that is our biggest challenge, but we have some very dedicated people that do that. Training, we talked about ELDT already, DPS driver training. We also provide first aid and CPR in-house, crisis prevention intervention. There's 20 hours that the state requires that you must have before you become a full-fledged bus driver. After the 20 hours, you have 8 hours every 3 years that you must go back and get recertified. We have training days in August. Those are usually 4 or 5 days, depending on the year. And we also have 2 staff development days throughout the year. All right. Safety. Let's talk a little bit about safety. We talked about the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. We also have a clearinghouse that we have to deal with. It used to be if you failed a drug test in one state, you could go to another state and get that same license for that state, and you'd keep rolling nationally. A few years ago, FMCSA said, no, we're going to have a national database. If you get popped, and that's kind of the words that we use, if you get tested positive for any drugs that are on the DOT random pre-employment drug screen, then that's going to be national. You lose your license no matter where you go. So we have to do that once a year, make sure that all our employees are in compliance. The next one, school bus driver record evaluation penalty system. You may remember DPS had a penalty system for all drivers in the past. If you had some kind of infraction, points were assessed to your license, whether you were a commercial driver license or not. And then there was money associated with that. Well, for us, we've always had that. For school bus drivers, we've always had that. And that point system says that if you have more than 10 points, you cannot drive a school bus. You can still drive an 18-wheeler, but you can't drive a school bus. And those points are assessed depending on the infraction. Improper equipment, that could be 1 point. Accidents, 2 points. Speeding, 3 points. So imagine getting 3 speeding tickets. That gets you up to 9. You're right at the threshold. Anything else, and then you're gone. Also, criminal records, anything driving incidents, DWIs, DUIs, that can be a suspension for amount of 10 years. Oh, did it freeze on me? I think I'm frozen. Thank you, Austin. Got it? All right. So vehicle inspection and maintenance. Okay. So in a nutshell, it's costing us a lot more to do what we need to do. Oh, thank you. As you can see, we still do the same thing that we're doing quite standard in our industry, maintenance every 10,000 miles, oil changes, fluids, grease, filters, everything related to the body, as you can see in the 53-point check. The numbers have gone up as the years pass. As you can see, just changing the fluids on a bus, if you think you're paying a lot for your vehicle, that's $650 for one bus. If we replace all the tires on that bus, that's $2,100. The brakes, if we replace all the brakes, that's over $1,000. The AC compressor is now $539. And this is a big one for us, AC Freon. That's just the Freon. This is not labor. This is just the part and or the fluid. That's $335 for every gallon. Fred, am I right? The Freon, is that gallons?
335 should be about
The whole thing.
3 pound.
There you go, 3 pounds.
By weight.
There you go. Thank you, Fred. Oh. All right, safety issues, seat belts. As of 2018 and newer buses, according to the state of Texas, every bus should be seat belted throughout. The implications of that is, according to Texas Education Code 34.013, is if it exists on the bus, it must be worn. That is a Texas Education Code law. I know we've had some people say, well, I'm not going to wear it. Well, you are responsible for that. If that happens, then we document that. We ask the administrators at the campuses to help us with that because it is the law now. School bus evacuations, it used to be required every year. You may remember that, maybe when you were in school. There was 2 points during the year that everybody in the district had to go through evacuation drills, whether you rode a bus or not. Well, the state did away with that a few years ago, but what we do now is we test to make sure our employees can evacuate a school bus. We do that through the interview process. So part of the interview is we take you out to a bus and we ask you to do 5 exercises that lets us see that you can evacuate a school bus, which includes going out the back of the door, by the way. We always tell them to wear something that's comfortable when they come to an interview and they're like, but I wanted to wear a suit. Well, it's your choice, but you may get a little dirty. And also all employees are tested annually. So we all go through that. Accident reports, all accidents are reported to TEA once a year. We document that. If there's no accidents related to passengers or vehicles involved is towed away, then that is an option of whether we report that or not. Okay, local facts, DPS. So a couple of years ago, 2021, and every so often, DPS asks us to do a red stop sign runners of our buses. So believe it or not, in one day, we had 97 school bus sign violations. That's just one day. And this is a small city, as you guys know, relatively. So can you imagine somewhere else? So imagine 179 days, 76 days, 74 days of school. That's happening continuously. So that's one of the things that our drivers have to contend with and deal with is people violating that stop sign. We have partnerships with CSPD, and so we always ask them if we see a volume of people passing our buses, contact them. They're very good about answering our call and going out to those areas and helping us with those folks that are violating that law. National facts, this is the latest that we have. This is from 2012, 2021. Just for comparison, we had 1,110 school bus transportation related fatalities. Dreadful. 775 of those were vehicle occupants, 183 were pedestrians, and 113 bus occupants. That includes the driver and the passengers, and also 39 non-occupants. So it sounds like a lot nationally, though, as you can probably know or would know, we are one of the safest forms of transportation, bar none. Not even walking to school is safer than riding a bus. And of course, the way the buses are built has a lot to do with it. The training that we provide our employees also has a lot to do with it. Okay, so when we do well, we award our employees and we recognize them at the local level. And depending on whether we have funds available, sometimes we will do a safety luncheon and recognize those people in general where everybody can see that they're doing well. Okay, routing. So if you go to our routing site, our website, this is what you would see. And this is the nuts and bolts of it. This is where folks would go to find their route, to find their time, the bus, and any other pertinent information. And we don't go by bus numbers anymore, by the way. We go by route numbers, which is about right here. Helps us when we have to substitute buses. So transportation routing. Here's the criteria that we use, and this is a state recommended. If you are more than 2 miles away from the campus, then you are eligible for transportation. We also have hazardous routes or hazardous areas that we consider for transportation, and those are assessed on a case-by-case basis. Special transportation, as you can see, students who are eligible under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act are considered and transported once that process has taken place. ARD committee gets together, recommends the transportation, we make the arrangements, and move forward. So, for the industry standard that we follow here as well is elementary students walk up to 2/10 of a mile to a bus stop. Secondary students can walk up to half a mile to the bus stop. That makes us more efficient as far as time and also with our resources. Every parent, including myself, would like to have a stop right in front of my door. Unfortunately, we cannot do that. As a matter of fact, when I first got here, we had a lot of that going. One of my tasks was to make those routes more efficient, and we have been very successful at that, and my staff has also as well. Capacities. Let's talk a little bit about capacity. So school buses are rated by the manufacturer, and there's always a tag up at the front that tells you what the rated capacity is. Usually on a big bus, you'll see either 71 up to 77 passengers. And you may ask, well, what's the difference between a 71 and 77? It's the same size bus, but you lose that seating, that knee space, kind of like when you're in an airplane, right? So that's the difference. But it does come into play when you have a max of 74 kids. Instead of putting 2 buses to a community, now you can change a bus, a 77 passenger, and you still got a little bit of room to grow. And of course, elementary kids can fit up to 71 or 77 kids. The intermediates, our kids are getting a little bigger and stronger. So 2 to a seat, and maybe half of the bus would be 3 to a seat, where it's feasible. The high school, it gets a little harder. So we may have up to 54 kids on a bus. Again, case by case. Okay, the paid rider system. We do have a paid rider system, as you saw. We had, last year we had four riders, and this year we have 0 at this point, at this time. And basically what that is, if you don't qualify under the normal rules from TEA, you can ask to be transported by us if you meet the criteria. What is the criteria? The students are eligible to be paid riders if they live between 1 and 2 miles from their campus. So if you're across the street from the campus, you don't qualify for this. If you're half a mile, you still don't qualify. You must be at least a mile. No paid riders for less than 1 mile, and we don't deviate from the route for more than 0.2 of a mile. And there must be room on that bus to accommodate the paid rider. When I first got here, we had over 200 paid riders. There was no criteria. We established a criteria, and it slowly has gone down every year. Those are the costs, as you can see up there. Regular ed, 1 child is $70, 2, $110, 3, $140. If you're in free and reduced lunch, that's reduced accordingly.
Those costs are per
child.
per year, per month, per semester? Per
Yes, ma'am,
month.
per month. Thank you for the question. Yes, ma'am. So recent reports, as you can see, our route services report, those are just route-related miles, steadily going up. In 21, we had 907, 257. In 22, we had over 1 million. And then in 23, we had 1.2 million miles traveled. Our operations report, which is due December 1st, as you can see, this is the cost per mile. This is not funding. This is cost per mile. This is what it's costing us to run those buses. Regular ed, it's $4.45 in 2021. Special, it was $4.33. Moving all the way up to 2023, we are at $4.36 for regular and $4.28 for special. We also have Head Start students that ride our buses, and we are also do audits with them. They have an audit of our system every year with no major findings. All right, here's our challenges, some of our challenges. Employee recruitment and retention. So turnover rate, year to date, we are at 32%. The annual turnover rate last year was 46%. So this is where the bonuses come into play. If we can hire somebody without training and investing all those hours and time and money into them, that helps us. But as you can see, those numbers are quite high. 15 to 25% absence rate, depending on whether there's a lot of COVID, fevers, bugs out there or not. That impacts us quite a bit. Surprisingly, more on Fridays. 45 days average lag time to qualify new employees, like we talked about. We assume that we're going to spend 40 to 50 hours face-to-face with an individual that does not have a CDL. The starting bus driver pay, as we heard earlier, is a little bit under our competitor. Highly visible. You don't need an 800 number to call our district about something that's gone wrong with, on our buses. Very visible. The ratio, we have one person, one driver usually for 77 students on the bus. Like I said, with your back to the kids. Traffic challenges, you guys heard about that already. The student safety and transparency and accountability, that's what we're all about. We meet also all TEA requirements, Department of Public Safety, Department of Labor, TCEQ. Those are all met, obviously, every year. Implications. So areas we need to address, routing software and accountability system. We are in the process of looking at different routing systems that will help us be more accountable. Our system that we currently have is a little lacking, and so that's why we are looking into this. We have two prospective companies that do very well. We hope to make a decision really quick here to implement those accountability. And by accountability, we mean account for the child, the student, when he gets on and when he gets off. Depending on the system that we go with, a parent may be able to geocode a certain area of the route, and when that bus crosses that area, the parent will get a notification. Oh, Johnny is at the 2 blocks away, depending on what the parent decides where they want to put that. If they want to put it right at the home, then it's right at the home. It'll be really, really nice. It'll help with the calls. You know, where's my bus? What happened to the bus? Because they'll be able to see that in real time. We're very excited about that, by the way. The efficiencies, maximizing riders per route. We adjust the routes all year long. So depending on feedback from the drivers, the parents, the students sometimes, believe it or not, we'll get a call from a bus and they'll say, I'm Johnny and I'm on bus 53 and it is really crowded in here. Okay, Johnny, we're gonna be looking into that. We'll see if capacities are where they need to be and do what we gotta do. So lots of feedback. Discipline, obviously, monitor the trends by campus, by route. We train our drivers accordingly. And then accidents. The goal is to have no accidents, 0 accidents. Right now, we have no accidents to report. That's not to say that we don't have small little accidents, minor incidents. We do, but major, at fault, casualties, injuries, none of that so far, and we hope to keep it that way. Okay. So we review metrics throughout the year, and we make those recommendations and changes accordingly. The Board of Trustees, obviously, you have this sort of presentation 3 to 4 years out, but we are always ready to hear your input, obviously from Dr. Harkrider, my superiors as well. We have those, and we do also do annual updates on the metrics. Now here we're at the point where we can skip over to the end if you'd like, or we can go through the metrics. You have those in front of you. Don't want to keep you here forever. It's there. It's for your viewing. And if you have any questions at this point, or if you'd like me to go on through the metrics, we can do that.
What y'all want to do? We're good? Roll on.
All right. Keep going? All right. So, what measures do we use in transportation? We develop the metrics, determine the performance targets, and then from board input and others, we correct those metrics, and the performance targets, and the annual report on the performances. Obviously, we're going to be looking at safety, productivity, quality, and customer satisfaction. As you can see, the standard for our industry is every 100,000 miles, it's expected that you're going to have at least 1 incident, 1 accident. As you can see by the performances, we are doing quite well. 2019 to 2020, we had 1. Also 21, 22, we had 1 accident. Year to date, we have 0. And we monitor those incidents and document and address depending on what happened. So we're above industry standards is what that says. Bus capacities, as we mentioned earlier, Elementary is 71 to 77 passengers. The intermediates, we'd like to be at about 60 students per bus. The high schools, the target goal is to be 54 students per bus. We'd want to be at least 90% full on that bus. Most of our buses are exceeding that. Average riders that we have across the district is 55.8. The performance, as you can see, average daily ridership is 60, and then the maximum is 77, obviously. We do max out, and those are elementary kids, smaller kids. Student discipline. As you can see, the goal is 1 for every 1,000 miles. And that's a lofty goal. Can you imagine going 1,000 miles with your kids and not having an incident? So that's a lofty goal, and we strive to do that. As you can see, we met it in 2021. 21, 22, it was a little bit over that. So we had 1 incident for every 1,172 miles. 23, we had 1 for every 1,325 miles. And then year to date, we have 662. It looks like we're going to maybe go over, depending on how it goes from here to the end of the year. So the employee turnover, we'd like to be at 25% based on our area. In 2018 and 19, we were at 24%. Then in 1920, we were at 26. The 2021 was at 18%, but as you guys may recall, that was COVID, so there was not a lot of turnover during that year. And then, boom, look at 21, 22. We were at 40%, and then 46% the following year. We have a transient population that work for us. We are quite often used as a stepping stone. Again, the 5 hours a day sometimes doesn't meet the needs of our employees. And so we lose a lot of our employees to full-time employment. And you can't blame them. It's just hard to swallow. And of course, the economy, depending on the economy, if there's a bad economy, we have more people staying, retaining. If it's a good economy, if they have choices, more than likely we're going to be struggling. Okay, customer satisfaction. So incidents, complaints, concerns, we track that on a daily basis. The goal is to have no more than 300 a year. As you can see, in 2021, we had 352. In 2022, we had 362. In 2023, we had 482. And then year to date, 247. I don't know that we're going to meet our goal, but we still have a target to meet with. That's what we're shooting for.
Any explanation for the 2023? Anything, any trends or general things?
I could not tell you, to be honest with you. That was a real outlier for us.
I would say the current environment where we live in would be that. I would say less on what we're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Believe it or not, that's the end of my presentation. Is there any questions or comments that you might have for me?
I do. Sorry. I have quite a number. First, obviously, thank your organization for what you guys do. You do a wonderful job. We are so lucky to have you and your team. I mean, I know this because of the metrics. We know this because we don't hear a lot about the transportation. And also, my kids were bus drivers every day until they got their cars, unless they had an activity. Very happy with that. And like you say, it is the safest way for kids to get to school. So important. A couple questions. Do you, the budget, how much of that, what percentage, and this may be you, Mr. Strauss, how much is weighted funding, or, where's that we get some transportation weighted funding to some degree, right? So how much is paying out that $5 million? Okay. Roughly.
So we receive from the state equivalent to $1 a mile. a little bit weighted for special ed. So you saw that 1.2 million miles. So that is about what we get in state revenues. So it's really easy to calculate. It's $1 a mile. So we get a little over a million. And remarkably, that went up in 2019. It had been much less than that. And I think it had been 15, 20 years before it had changed to the $1 a mile.
So less than 20 or 20, 25, somewhere in there, percent of what we're
Correct.
spending on transportation
Yes.
is coming from the state. Okay, and the rest we have to find.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks. Did the safety waiver we voted or on a few months back get approved?
Safety waiver.
Yes, it did.
It did?
Yes,
Okay,
and
so-
we are transporting that particular area.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
I mean, that's the other area that's kind of concerned that falls under, to me, is transportation. Is that 0 to 2 mile window where kids need to get to school. And I mean, many of you have done pick up and drop off. There are still lots of cars there. To me, the safest and most efficient way would be to have more kids on our bus, even though it would cost us more money. The other thing, and I think we've had some presenters and people talk about it, is just continuing to look at the other transportation modes that happen there, the walking, the cycling. And I always said, I feel like we do have some responsibility to keep that 0 to 2 mile as a safe, effective way for our kids, an alternative for kids to get to school. And there's a lot of benefits, but it needs to be safe. So maybe the question is, how much do you see under your purview as transportation, as that being kind of part of what you looked at? Or where do we
So I do believe, is there specific requirements for that, within that 2 miles, for it to be considered a hazardous zone? We can't just say this is a hazardous zone. There are criteria that it must meet, because not only does the board have to agree with that and pass a resolution, then we have to send it to TEA.
Right.
So I'm not sure what that criteria is, but.
That is correct, and the board has a lot of leeway. Every board has a lot of leeway to say this is hazardous, this is considered hazardous, we're going to transport this, or we're not. Obviously, resources come into play. Every time you qualify one area because of the criteria, then you have to look at the whole district as a whole and how many of those communities also qualify under that. And do we have the resources to provide those services?
And I guess I'm even thinking, sorry, I had my mic off, outside of a bus. I mean, are we looking at other things, like making sure we have the bike paths, the sidewalks that really will facilitate those areas? And maybe even going as far as are there opportunities for funding for those things? We know the city, gets they mentioned getting funding for those things, and how we go about supporting those efforts.
Yeah, as far as my purview, Ms. Adams, I don't think we have a lot of way to weigh that on. The city, like you said, always reaches out to us and lets us know, hey, we're working on this to make walk routes, safe zones to school. What can you help us with? And so we're always very eager to help them with that information. But as far as funds that are provided by the state, there are.
So maybe it's somewhere else within our organization that's really focusing on that, the safety around our schools. Maybe it's our safety, right? I mean, it's a team, obviously. Okay.
We've got a good relationship with the city. I think a lot of schools that are around neighborhoods that we can work together. We're actually having some conversations with the city right now about the crosswalk right here, the major crosswalk at Consol. As far as what we can control is our school grounds and what's right around. When you get into neighborhoods and stuff like that, it's outside, but it doesn't stop us from having conversations of what we could do to, better overall see the safety.
I will. Transportation on and So depending on what section, they're looking at to help with that.
Anything else? Mr. Silva, I appreciate you getting up the rain freeze because I know that's what we're having to do. So we appreciate you team that and the safety of the kids. So thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, sir.
That brings us to we'll adjourn.